I have a rendezvous with death. We'll preserve the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
If you only get your information from social media or the usual suspect media outlets, you probably believe there are a significant number of Americans who oppose Elon Musk's efforts at exposing the spendthrift practices of our bought and paid for corrupt deep state monopolized federal government. Don't believe it. Not for a New York minute. For those who genuinely seek accurate and truthful information, it may surprise you to learn that the mainstream media complex and its toady polling organizations, you know, the ones that had Kamala Harris winning over Donald Trump in the 2024 general election, well, they want you to believe that a significant portion of the Republic doesn't want waste, fraud, and corruption exposed and eliminated. Further, they want you to think that everyone hates Elon Musk. 10 of the most prestigious, and for those listening to the podcast, I'm using that word facetiously. 10 of the most prestigious polling institutions report a mixed but often negative view of Elon and his leadership of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. A recent AP poll found that 52% of U.S. adults have an unfavorable opinion of Musk, compared to 36% with a favorable view. Regarding DOGE, only 29% approved of its creation, and 60% of the respondents viewed it as a bad thing. A YouGov The Economist poll reported that 52% of Americans view Musk unfavorably, compared to 42%. For DOGE, 42% viewed it favorably, but 38% were unfavorable, and notably, it was less popular than many federal programs it aimed to cut. The Morning Consult poll, who polled 2,000 registered voters allegedly, said that 46% disapproved of Musk's involvement in the government, compared to 41% who approved. And the ever-questionable Reuters Ipsos poll revealed that 58% of Americans were concerned that Musk's efforts to slash government spending could delay critical services like Social Security and student aid. And the Groundwork Collaborative Public Citizen poll, conducted by Hart Research, showed 54% of voters with an unfavorable view of Musk, rising to 63% by the end after respondents learned more about DOGE's operations and Musk's potential conflicts of interest. Additionally, 57% felt Musk had too much influence, with 61% less favorable towards him due to the unregulated access to government systems and his business interests. Quinnipiac University poll said a majority of 54% disapproved of Musk's role in the Trump administration, with 42% approving, placing him 12 points underwater in that poll. And the ever-leftist Pew Research Center found that 54% of respondents had an unfavorable view of Musk, compared to 42%. And lastly, the CBS YouGov poll, boy, that just reeks of illegitimacy right there, doesn't it? Found that nearly half of the respondents, 49%, wanted Musk to have less or no influence over government spending and operations, and 31% said he should have none at all. The results of these polls are being trumpeted in the usual suspect left-wing alphabet media and special interest publications including Politico, Axios, Newsweek, Mother Jones, GroundworkCollaborative.org, Reuters, The New Republic, NBC News, and others. Incidentally, two of the most accurate polls in the 2024 general election, Rasmussen Reports and the Trafalgar Group, both reported a majority supporting Elon Musk and the DOGE effort. So what is it that the deep state masters of the propaganda polling outlets hate so much about Elon Musk and his activities with DOGE? Well, within 30 days of its inception, DOGE found $55 billion in fraud, waste, redundancy, and corruption in federal spending, and that's just in 30 days. At the center of the deep state grift, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, until recently headed by Samantha Power. DOGE exposed that a significant portion of USAID funds, up to 82%, never reaches intended recipients. Instead, it's pocketed by prime contractors and NGOs, turning aid into a personal slush fund for Washington, D.C. insiders. What are some of those USAID-funded projects? Well, funding for a $20 million Sesame Street project in Iraq, $1.5 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion projects in Serbia, millions of taxpayer dollars to nonprofits linked to terrorist organizations, $9 million in aid diverted to groups like the Al-Nusra Front in Syria, and millions for food aid reaching Al-Qaeda-affiliated fighters also in Syria. They exposed millions to EcoHealth Alliance for Wuhan lab gain-of-function research, $70,000 for a DEI musical in Ireland, and millions for printing personalized contraceptives in developing countries. They were printing the country's flags on condoms. And this is just a sampling of the list of abuses the American taxpayer has had to endure under the grotesque campaign of grift perpetrated by the deep state uniparty. Most recently, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has said that DOGE, targeting three main areas of acts of fraud at the Social Security Administration, duplicate payments, payments to deceased individuals, and broader systemic integrity issues, has found data inconsistencies that raise concerns about payments to people listed as 150, 200, or even 360 years old. The Social Security Administration database shows millions of people over 100 years old with the death field set to false, implying they might still be receiving benefits despite being dead. It's like voting in Chicago. The Social Security Administration's own Inspector General reported in July of 2024 that improper payments, including some to deceased individuals, totaled $71.8 billion from fiscal years 2015 to 2022 alone. Additionally, a 2021 audit specifically identified $298 million paid to about 24,000 deceased individuals through December of 2019. It should be noted here that DOGE hasn't even come close to concluding their audits of any of these agencies. It's all in the beginning stages. Now, I'm fortunate to connect with a great many people, both domestically and internationally, during the course of my days, and I can make this statement with absolute certainty. I have yet to come across anyone who, once informed about the facts and figures of the matter, the actual data, and who genuinely wants the United States to thrive, I have yet to come across anyone who supports the continuation of the deep state's diabolical campaign of grift. My larger point here is this. The mainstream media, along with those aforementioned polling organization toadies, routinely manufacture polls to fit the preferred narrative of the deep state uniparty. Their history of push polling isn't a secret, and today the overwhelming number of polling organizations only execute push polls. To that end, ask yourself this question. If the mainstream public opinion polls were on the up and up, why would political campaigns need internal polling? So, as you scroll through the posts about fuzzy baby animals and which celebrity turned down $7 trillion to star in a movie with Oprah and Robert De Niro, keep in mind that the onslaught of anti-DOGE and anti-Musk memes and posts are as credible as a daycare center run by P. Diddy and Jeff Epstein. They aren't. They are propaganda pieces sanctioned by the deep state uniparty to discredit an initiative that means to return sanity to government spending and the government itself to the service of the American people. Don't get sucked into it. When we return, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally on our flagship station, WGUL, AM 930 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
A free and independent media is the backbone of our great republic. So it's crucial to have media outlets that aren't influenced by big tech censorship or the leftist mainstream media complex. But that means supporting journalistic outlets that bring us the truth without spinning facts to push a narrative. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee once a month at Starbucks, you can support the free speech mission of undergroundusa.com, an independent, reader-supported, and sometimes irreverent podcast and publication that gives you the real story without the bias. Go to undergroundusa.com/UUSA. That's undergroundusa.com/UUSA to receive a 25% discount on an annual subscription, bringing every new podcast and article directly into your email inbox, circumventing the censors and fact checkers. Remember, knowledge is power, and staying informed is one of the best ways to protect our republic. Go out there and seek the truth, my friends. Subscribe to undergroundusa.com today.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
Well, you know, Frank, somebody made a decision over at MSNBC. They're going to replace Joy Reid with a panel show, I guess. But this crushing defeat that the Democrats and the far left really have gone through just keeps getting manifested in different ways, doesn't it?
No, I'm sure it disappoints Joy Reid's seven viewers. You know,
right.
But when you are an overt racist and caustically so, that's what happens to you when a country wakes up and says we've had enough of this identity politics division. And she was one of the big dividers in social media. She was not a uniter. She didn't think of the United States as a melting pot of people who've assimilated into an American culture. She was a balkanizer, and she was hateful at that. So I believe she's reached her demise at MSNBC with it's well warranted. Let's put it that way. I don't think she's going to disappear. I think she'll probably pop up on a podcast, and because she was making $3 million a year to spout her hate and her racism, she's got enough of her own money to be able to push it out there. So I'm sure platforms like YouTube and Spotify and Apple will spotlight her ahead of more honest and just more honest podcasts that should be getting a lot more attention.
Yeah, exactly. Well, of course, it is part of a shakeup. They're trying to redo their messaging. But, you know, it seems to me, Frank, that the Democrats don't really have a lot, and especially in light of where Trump is leading. I mean, that's also a big part of this whole thing, is that Donald Trump's he's moving the needle. He's doing something. There is a process in place each and every day where people get the impression there's movement here.
Well, of course, and that's what happens when you have somebody who has an agenda and they stick to it. You know, we honestly, and if we're going to be fair here, we're unlike Joy Reid's show at MSNBC. We have to say that the Democrats under Biden, under Obama, had an agenda. They stuck to it, too. It was just an anti-American neo-Marxist agenda that was destroying the fiber of our country at every single opportunity. So when you have a reformative agenda that is constitutionally based and has pride in the nation and wants to be a government for all, to establish a government for all and not just for some, it seems radical. It seems like things are happening left and right now. Every 15 seconds, something else is coming out. That's because getting back to normal requires that. Getting back to the Constitution from where we've been led by the radical left under Obama and Biden, it requires a lot of movement. Now, we're seeing some people in this order that came down from Musk's department who said we want, talking points coming back on by midnight on Monday, saying what the hell did you do last week? We're seeing a lot of pushback from mid to upper mid-level managers in these departments and agencies saying, well, that's not the chain of command. If you don't have to answer that, we'll handle that. It goes through HR here at the State Department. You don't just take orders from. Mr. Trump has to put teeth into what Elon Musk asked for. Mm-hmm. He needs to direct every single department head to direct their downwind staff to follow the orders. And if not, you've usurped the authority of the president. Therefore, you have displeased the president, and because you serve at the pleasure of the president, you're dismissed.
Yeah.
It needs to be that simple, because people who are right now say you don't have to follow those orders, those are the people who are the cogs in the machine that clog everything up. They are the deep state. They are the people that maintain the status quo, believing that they can just wait out an administration like Donald Trump's so that the next transformative agenda administration can arrive. Those people have to go. Mm-hmm. If they're not executing their jobs in the spirit of what the American people have mandated for Donald Trump, they are the uniparty deep state problem.
I got to tell you, folks, what are we going to do? What are we going to do without Joy Reid? Well, and that little clip right there, Frank, was almost the epitome of, I'm just going to try to make the world the way I want it to be. You know, who would have ever thought that there was a flawless campaign that was run?
Of course, we're talking about Joy Reid, but thank God Rachel Maddow survives. That's right. To quote John, to paraphrase John Adams, thank God. Exactly.
Well, again, it's like you were saying, Frank. I think the American people woke up and said we don't want this anymore, but I do see what the Democrats are doing. I mean, they keep doubling down on all this stuff. It's all anti-Trump. It's anti-DOGE, which for the life of me, Frank, I can't understand. I mean, I get it when somebody has an agenda, but I can't understand why DOGE isn't more universally revered, if even for just trying to glom on to its success if you're the Democrat Party.
Yeah, it's a stupid hill to die on. It's one of the most politically inept positions that I've ever seen in all my years on this planet, to defend waste, fraud, and grift, because that's exactly what their stance is doing. It's defending waste, fraud, and grift. With every exposure that DOGE comes forward with, and USAID is the perfect example. It is the perfect example of there was money going to print flags of individual countries onto prophylactics.
Oh my goodness.
$70,000 for a DEI musical in Ireland.
Yep.
These are the things that it doesn't sound like much. 70 grand here, $1 million here, 2 million here. But when you add it all together, it turns into tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's how waste explodes. Not to mention, we shouldn't be involving ourselves in any social engineering anywhere. Not even in our own country, the government shouldn't be involving itself in social engineering, let alone in foreign nations. So our executive branch leader appointed someone to look into this, and that's what it is. It's not going to be a maybe we'll participate in this culling of the waste or not. It's what the executive wants, and he runs the executive branch. Politically, it's a non-starter. And if Republicans aren't jumping on this to trumpet it from the high heavens at 11, then something's intrinsically wrong with the Republican Party and especially their messaging machine. It needs to be as simple as this. Why are Democrats wanting to defend wasting your tax dollars? That's the message, GOP. Start getting it out there everywhere. Mm-hmm. In every interview, in every article, in every op-ed, on memes, social media everywhere, every podcast. That's got to be the message. Until Democrats go, maybe they're onto something and we got to stop it.
Yeah. Well, but part of their argumentation is going to be something like, well, we're trying to save all of the spending because we don't want to shut down hospitals or other kinds of stuff like that.
That is such BS. And that's all it can be called is BS. Hospitals are not going to shut down because you get rid of waste and fraud.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when you're talking about Medicaid or Medicare, the more waste and fraud you get rid of, the more efficient the system works. And that frees up actual money for people who need it in those programs. So the idea that if we get rid of waste and fraud and corruption, then essential programs are going to shut down. No. The only places that are shutting down are non-government organizations that were feeding from the government feed trough to launder money back into the governmental system, and government organizations that are either redundant, too corrupt to exist, or have outlived their usefulness. Mm-hmm. There's no reason we should tolerate $1 being wasted anywhere.
Right. I completely agree. Yeah.
And there can't be any excuse to defend it. If you're defending the existence of this or the continuation of this, or you're protesting the exposure of this, then you're the problem. And that goes for people who are defending their elected officials. I see people on social media now, they're trying, Elon Musk has too much power. Really? What's he doing? He's exposing the fact that your tax dollars are wasted. Well, he's only doing it to benefit himself because he's taking away programs that were actually investigating his corporations. Well, you get rid of investigations, or you get them to cease, or you expose them for their corruption when they were unlawful in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there really is a narrative out there that starts to take hold, that where people parrot back that same kind of thing, and it's really unfortunate. But Frank, with Donald Trump, what he's doing, though, you can have Hakeem Jeffries all the live long day, say how things are going to go so bad with what Trump is doing. But at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding, and Trump's leadership is actually, I think, going to win out. It's with voters. I can't see how it couldn't, because again, they're going to see these results.
Well, it's like his first term. Remember, the entire time Biden was in office, and the entire time that Kamala, the 14 seconds Kamala Harris was on the campaign trail.
Yeah,
they were saying that the 4 years of Trump never happened. That it was a horrible time where everybody lost their jobs, the economy was horrible, and it was all Trump's fault. Well, that's when you have an effective messaging machine, even if it's a boatload of lies, you can still capture some of the public, and these become the useful idiots of today who are saying Elon Musk is bad. DOGE is bad. I mean, there's polls being manufactured out there, and I covered this in the piece coming out shortly on undergroundusa.com, that say that the American people don't like DOGE and they don't like Elon Musk by a substantial margin. These are all push polls that are manufacturing results that cater to the narrative that's preferred by the left, by the deep state uniparty corrupt mechanism that has owned our government for just about 100 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And we, the rank and file, have to be smart enough to say, that's garbage, that's crap, not falling for it. We have to stay the course. And that means we have to be proactive and push back. You don't do it by calling somebody names. You do it by spouting facts and directing them to the place where the facts exists. So we have to do our part to keep this going. Trump can't do it all by himself, and he can't do it by executive order. Congress has to back him up with legislation. And that's where we come in. We need to browbeat our elected officials to make sure they legislate these changes so the next administration, God forbid we should lose, can't just reverse it with executive orders.
Well, we got a great text message, this from Michael in Tampa, and he says, I agree with Frank that we really need to lobby our legislators to follow through with the program that's being led by President Trump. And he needs to be ruthless with all of this. And, Frank, I think Trump is pretty ruthless with this because he's got, there's so much to do. This is why so much has been packed in, even just to the first month of the presidency.
Well, he's ruthless in what he wants to do. He's got to put some teeth into it. And a perfect example is what we talked about in the first segment with these mid-level to upper mid-level department heads and agency heads saying, no, employees, I know you got an email from the Office of Budget Man, the presidential office, executive office from Elon Musk saying you've got to justify this. You don't answer to him. You answer to me, and I'll take care of that. There's got to be teeth that penalize that person for violating the spirit of reformative transition. There has to be. Because if there's not, then I guarantee you, if there's not penalty for people who are usurping the authority of the president on his reformative agenda, it's going to just wait out the clock. 4 years. They've done it before. They know how to do it, and they know they can get away with it because the cog moves so slow when it's the sword of Damocles.
Yeah.
What Trump needs to do is say, and do it on national television if you have to. I know he hates the mainstream media, but use them. Use them like a paper towel. Then you can throw it away. Get on there, stream it live everywhere, YouTube, Rumble, everywhere, X, Truth Social, everywhere, and say, everybody's on notice. I'm going to make the order right now. The order is Elon Musk has my directive and the authority to mandate that every cabinet-level secretary, every department head, agency head, every leader of every executive branch entity under my authority will follow his order to the T. And anyone downstream from secretary on down who doesn't follow his order is usurping my authority and will be summarily dismissed from their job. Period. Dot. Don't care if you're a janitor or the HR head of your agency or department. This stops now. When the president gives an order, you don't say, maybe I'll follow it. You just do it. If you're an executive branch employee, you don't have the prerogative to say, I'm not going to. The only time that comes is when the order transgresses the law, and streamlining and repurposing and rebranding executive branch entities departments, agencies, even if they're funded by Congress, and this is all constitutional, it's within the purview of the president. And it's exactly what he did. DOGE, by the way, is repurposed from an initiative that was about technology advancement that was established and congressionally funded under Obama.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no hoop to jump through for this effort to be bound with the president's authority. And these mid-level people who have decided that they get to have a say in what the president orders, they need to be terminated immediately.
Yeah. Well, but of course you've got, as you said, they're trying to sort of slow the machine down, because the last thing the far left or the Democrat Party elite want is to have a streamlined federal government. Number one, that's efficient, but number two, is going to be missing a lot of those people who have their own agenda, like you're talking about, or an agenda that's aligned with something that's outside of what the elected president wants. And that goes for any elected president. I mean, this is the idea. You know, you can't have this thing, this tiger by the tail kind of a thing, and just, as you said, wait through these administrations. In fact, it used to be back in the days of J. Edgar Hoover. He would look at presidents as sort of these transients that would come through the Oval Office, but he and his power base remained all the time. I mean, that's how they looked at it.
Well, and I have to make this caveat. It's not just the Democrats, so I'm not going to point the finger at them. That would be hypocritical. This is the deep state. This is the uniparty. There are Republicans and Democrats who are doing this, and watch this happen. And it's going to be something that we're going to see that may be well-meaning, but it's how the Republicans fold like a house of cards whenever you get this reformative movement moving forward. It's going to be, we can't get rid of that program because that actually brings things into my district, so I can't vote for that reform. That's going to happen, and we can't have it. This is a time when we need to understand that because we've gotten so far away from what we're supposed to be, that there's going to be some pain all the way around in order to get back to good. That's just the way it has to be. It can't be everybody else has to cut, but it's not going to be me. No, that can't be the way it's going to be. And if you're an elected official and you're thinking that way, you're part of the problem.
Yep, exactly. And it has gotten out of control. And it to the point where we've got money going places. We have no idea where it's going. There are these things in the budget that have no note attached to say what it paid for. And you're right. I mean, they're bringing home the bacon or the pork, as it were, to your district. That's part and parcel of what they think. This is where really my loyalty lies. But it actually is not really that in the grand sense.
No, it is an elected officials, especially in the House of Representatives. They're supposed to represent the people in that body with votes. This pork thing has become an idea that that's what government is. But it's not. You go there, the bills come to the floor, you vote on them. You do it in the voice that your people send you to Washington to have. But it's not about clawing back all you can possibly get from every other American just so you look good to get reelected. Mm-hmm. That jig has to be up. And in the Senate, well, the progressives screwed the pooch on that one back in the beginning of the 20th century because they went with direct elections of the senators. They were supposed to be representative of the states' governments in Washington, D.C., so that they were looking out for the well-being of the states. Now they're an overglorified House of Representatives who do the same thing with pork.
Oh, yeah. Money, money, money.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Wokeism is a threat to the very foundations of our great nation and to the very principles of liberty and justice. The goal of wokeism is to divide us, pitting Americans against one another based on race, gender, and identity. This ideology undermines free speech and open dialogue, which are the bedrock of our republic. It promotes censorship and cancels anyone who dares to challenge its extreme agenda. We must stand against this cultural Marxism and protect our constitutional rights. Say no to wokeism.
Before I go, I wanted to celebrate a move made by MSNBC of all places to recognize their responsibility, at least in this instance, to truth in our public square. Benjamin Mullen of the New York Times reports this.
Joy Reid's evening news show on MSNBC is being canceled, part of a far-reaching programming overhaul orchestrated by Rebecca Cutler, the network's new president. The final episode of Ms. Reid's 7 p.m. show, The Readout, is planned for sometime this week, according to 2 people familiar with the changes.
Reid comes in a close second to Rachel Maddow as one of the most caustically partisan personalities in the media today, with Mika and Joe coming in a distant third. The false narratives, conspiracy theories, and politically uneducated drivel advanced by Reid and her ilk are not only racist, they're allodoxophobic. She fears opinions differing from her own. Her race-based, exploitive rants were consistently counterproductive to the discussion of truth and fact, and, in fact, damaging to society. That Joy Reid is losing her $3 million a year paycheck. Who the fuck thought she was worth $3 million a year? That she's losing that cash cow, along with having her corporate media megaphone shut off, should be celebrated. Not because it's canceling a caustic, hateful voice, but because it's forcing Reid to face the harsh reality that her positions about politics and society aren't selling in the public square, and thus don't warrant any spotlight. Now, I'm sure Reid will exist tone-deaf to this truth, that she is so out of tune with society, and even the overwhelming majorities of the Democrat Party and the black community, that she can't even get a gig on the hyper-partisan MSNBC anymore. But I'm equally certain that she'll refuse to fade from the roach-infested corners of the spotlight, those rounded corners where fraudulent conspiracy theorists, has-been partisan hacks, and Hitlerian haters dwell in obscurity. I'm sure she'll launch a podcast, and places like YouTube, Spotify, and Apple will again ignore her unmistakable racism and intrinsic hatred to spotlight her claptrap over fact-based and honest podcasts, all because some political hack in an editor's suite long ago once saw the possibility of ratings through the exploitation of identity politics. Ta-ta, Joy, and don't let the door hit you in your race-baiting, hateful ass on the way out.
You're listening to Underground USA.
The foundation of our great nation lies in our unwavering commitment to freedom, and at its core is the principle of free speech. It's not just a right, but a duty to speak our minds, respectfully debate, and challenge ideas. Today, free speech is under attack by the forces of the deep state and the globalists. We must all do our part to protect free speech, for without it, we'd be lost in a sea of woke conformity and censorship. We have the right. Protect it.
If you like the podcast, please head on over to undergroundusa.com and sign up for our Substack. It brings every new podcast and article directly into your email inbox. And do your part to protect the Republic. Talk politics, current events, religion, and other important issues with your family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. Do it respectfully and jettison the argumentative tone. When we have these constructive conversations, we realize we've got more in common with each other than we have in difference. And that hobbles the deep state from balkanizing us into malleable chunks that can be manipulated when election season comes around. It takes away their power, and that's what we need to do. The deep state needs to be vanquished, once and for all. You're listening to Underground USA. No fear, no political correctness, and no wokeism. I'm Frank Salvato.